Welcome to Biz Filing's Expert Insights.
Hi, I'm Greg Corombos. Our guest this week on Expert Insights is Gene Marks. Gene is a small business owner. He's head of the Marks Group and an accomplished speaker and columnist. We want to get his insights on what help small businesses are getting in the latest round of COVID relief, what help they still need, how to navigate the latest round of restrictions on small businesses, and what he sees as possible silver linings for 2021. And Gene, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Greg. And boy, we're going to talk about all that stuff in like 10 or 20 minutes. Forget about it.
Let's
absolutely.
Block
out a couple hours.
No one can condense like you, Gene. But anyway, first of all, Happy New Year to you. And 2021 certainly is off to an active start, shall we say. The December COVID relief bill was signed just before the end of 2020. There's more PPP assistance in here, but it's more targeted this time. So what are the conditions for more aid, and how much is this going to help the right people?
Well, listen, you're absolutely right. The last round of the PPP was really made available generally to all businesses. Now it is definitely much more targeted. So first of all, if you didn't get a PPP loan the first time around, you can now get a PPP loan. And if you already had a PPP loan and you've exhausted it, meaning you've spent all of the money, then you can potentially apply for another round of PPP, but there are definitely some rules. So let me make sure that we're clear on what those rules are. First of all, to apply for a second round of PPP, you will have to show a 25% reduction in your gross receipts, your revenues, for either the first, second, or third quarters of 2020 when compared to the prior year's quarter, 2019. So if you didn't have a 25% reduction in any one of those three quarters, you're not going to be able to get a second round of PPP. And by the way, there's more calculations that are involved in that, but that's generally what's required. The good news is, though, is that if you're a restaurant owner or in the food service business and some other industries like it, you can actually get more PPP than everybody else. If you go for a second round of PPP, you're generally entitled to like 2.5 times your payroll. Restaurants and people in the accommodation industries are allowed 3.5 times their payroll of eligibility for PPP loans. So that's the first thing, is that there's more money that's available for people in the restaurant industry. You have to show that you've been impacted, you've had that revenue lost. And then a few other quickies. You have to have less than 300 employees. And basically, you can't be, frankly, owned by a Chinese company or partially owned by a Chinese company. You can't be in the lobbying business. You can't be a publicly held company. And you also had to have been in existence before February 15th of 2020. So in other words, you can't just be a startup in 2020 and then apply for PPP money. So lots of rules, but also lots of opportunities. My advice, if you think you can qualify, or even if you're just not sure, talk right now to an SBA lender. Remember, these loans go out through SBA banks. So go to SBA.gov, the Small Business Administration, SBA.gov. You'll find very easily a list of their lenders. Reach out to a lender and say, hey, does my business qualify? Can you help me get a PPP loan?
Do you think these parameters are set well? I mean, it's very hard to do a one-size-fits-all approach to this, but in terms of number of people on the payroll, amount of losses that help you qualify here, are those about what you expected?
Yeah, it is. I mean, there was a lot of scrutiny in the first two rounds. This is actually the third round, Greg, right, of PPP. Right. But there was a lot of scrutiny in the first couple of rounds because a lot of publicly held companies got it. Tom Brady got a loan. Kanye West got loans. There was all sorts of, and then there was fraud involved. So you're not going to have a perfect system. But really the idea here is we need to target this to those companies that are really in need of this money. And really, and we're really keeping our fingers crossed on this, Greg, with the vaccines coming out and hopefully ramping up over the next couple of months. It's just, this is money that some of these really hard hit businesses, restaurant, retailers, people in the travel industry, that they really need this money to see them through the next few months until hopefully there's sunlight on the horizon.
Another thing you've highlighted in your writings, Gene, is the fact that it's now easier to not have to pay these loans back, which is going to be huge for these small businesses. Expanded forgiveness parameters. What's changed there?
Yeah, I mean, this is like big news for a lot of us and my clients, my company too, that got like an original Paycheck Protection loan. I was telling our clients, listen, wait until you apply for forgiveness of these loans, because things are going to change, and they have. So if you've got a loan of less than $150,000, your forgiveness is going to be super easy. There's basically just a form that you're going to have to fill out. You're going to have to represent that you did spend your money on the qualified expenses, but you're not going to have to provide any documentation or any calculations or go through a lot of the bureaucracy that was originally intended, which is a big relief to a lot of business owners and to the banks as well, because that was going to be a major headache. So if you've got a loan for less than $150,000, Greg, wait for a little bit, because the SBA is still getting their act together. The banks haven't gotten this new form that you're going to have to fill out. It's coming in the next few weeks. And then talk to your banker, get a hold of that form and fill it out, and then you'll be good to go. Just remember, you've got 10 months to file for forgiveness after your forgiveness period ended, that 8-week or 24-week period that you chose. So there's no rush on it. And even if your outstanding balance is still there, it's only at a 1% interest rate. So it's not like it's that expensive. So take a deep breath, wait until the documentation is ready. And then if you've got less than $150,000 loan, by all means, go for it. If you have a loan bigger than $150,000, you will have to go through the process of applying for forgiveness. But the good news is that more things are now eligible for forgiveness. You can now deduct technology expenses. If your property suffered any damage because of the disturbances that happened in 2020, you can deduct that. You've got certain supplier costs that you needed to keep in operation. You can include that as part of your forgiveness calculation. Personal protective equipment as well for your workers, that's now included. So they've really expanded the definition of expenses that are allowable for forgiveness if you have more than $150,000 in a PPP loan. So that'll make it even easier for you to get full forgiveness on your loan. So that's all good stuff.
What's missing, Gene? I mean, there's a lot of things that obviously could have gone in, but if there's anything that you said, oh man, they really needed to put that in, is there anything like that?
That's a really great question, because when I look at the definitions of what they're allowing, like I go through my P&L, payroll, rent, mortgage, my any rental costs, operations expenditures for technology, for my HR, for my accounting, all that stuff. I'm pretty hard pressed to find expenses that are not included that I couldn't put forward for forgiveness. I mean, it's really kind of a big, much wider open net. So no, I mean, Greg, I got to say, when it comes time, when my clients apply for forgiveness, they're going to find that a much larger share of their costs are included. The only thing that people may have an issue with is that you still have to meet that same mix of expenses. In other words, 60% of your forgivable expenses must be for payroll, and the other 40% can be for non-payroll expenses. And we do have clients that are like, hey, we really had to cut back on payroll because it's a recession, but we still had other expenses that still incurred. But you're still required to meet that 60-40 rule. And that might be the only thing. And if I were to change anything, that would be the only thing I would like to see change. But it's not going to be changed.
We're talking with Gene Marks. He's the head of the Marks Group. He's an accomplished speaker and columnist. And Gene, in our remaining time, let's look at the existing challenges and hopeful reason for optimism here in 2021. But let's talk about where we are right now. Depending on the state, there are once again pretty intense restrictions in place on a lot of businesses with rising virus numbers and so forth. What are the keys to surviving another season of hardship like this? A lot of businesses, of course, barely made it out of what we saw in the spring and into the early summer. They started to get back on their feet, and now with the colder weather and other reasons, the virus numbers are ticking back up. So authorities are once again putting restrictions in place. So how do you get through this second gut punch?
I got to tell you something, Greg. I am really concerned about what's going on in the UK right now. I mean, that country has been completely shut down. Oh, they're in another lockdown, their third one. Very similar to what we all kind of saw back in like March and April. And listen, if there's one thing I've learned from this pandemic is that whatever we saw happening in Europe, it eventually made its way here. And already we're hearing reports from different states of this new, more easily spread, variant of COVID moving around. And I'm very concerned that, those kinds of effects could happen here before we get the vaccines really fully rolled out. And so because of that, we're telling our clients that you have to still be in a worst case scenario mode right now. Yes, I do believe that by the second half of the year, we will be, getting back to normal as more people get vaccinated. But, listen, we hear this from some of our elected leaders. I mean, we are really looking at a few tough months ahead of us, January, February, March at the very least. And, you've got to be checking, obviously, on your cash. You've got to make sure that you have got yourself set up and prepared for a potential additional lockdown. I'm not talking about like restaurants and retailers. I'm talking about other businesses. Like you might need to be sending employees home again if this variant spreads in the US like it did in the UK, and governments are requiring that. So it's really, a matter of survival over the next few months. And we're just telling our clients, put yourself back to April of 2020. Everything that we experienced back then could happen again. Be prepared for it now, just in case. Hopefully that won't happen, but be prepared just in case.
Let's talk about reason for hope here for a couple of minutes. We've talked about the arrival of vaccines and passing here, but there's, like you said, hope that we'll get to some sort of normal this year. What opportunities are waiting out there once this fog lifts, or maybe out there right now? We've seen a lot of folks obviously have to transition pretty aggressively to digital, particularly if they hadn't done that before the pandemic hit. Now, almost a year ago, we've seen brick and mortar have to definitely add that digital dimension. We've obviously seen restaurants adapt, but in terms of what's going to be different, perhaps permanently, or at least for the foreseeable future, about our economy, what opportunities do you see out there?
I can definitely tell you first of all, we have a huge opportunity for labor. There are 12 million people unemployed. The economy is still stuck in a recession. And let's face it, there's a lot of businesses that aren't going to be coming back after this situation, which means that there are opportunities to hire people out there, to get talent. And regardless of all the technology that we see in the world today, there's still the old truism is still true, which is your employees are your biggest assets. So my smartest clients right now are evaluating the labor market, and they're out there hunting for good, smart people that might be unemployed or in transition because of the recession. And if they're investing anywhere, they're investing in people to bring on and prepare for the future. The other opportunity, there's a few of them. You talk about cloud and work from home technologies. No, you're not going to be closing up your office. The real estate industry is not going to collapse. I don't believe that's the case at all. What I do think is going to happen is that the smartest companies will finally accept the fact that, the cloud works. And working from home is not something that as a fallback. It's a benefit that you now provide to all of your employees. And culture in the office won't be as important as it was before, because you can now be offering to your employees, listen, you come and work from us, and we now have a work from home policy, 2 days a week work from home, or 3 days a week, whatever you can afford to do. You're not going to shut down your office, but at the same time, you're going to, have the ability to really give yourself flexibility to your employees and hire a lot of people that are looking for that flexibility. So again, I think the smart business owners are going to jump on that. I think real estate is going to be another opportunity, Greg. I mean, even the downtown office spaces, listen, Amazon has been leasing tons of space, not only warehouse, but office space. Facebook also just had a big leasing arrangement deal in New York City. These are not dumb companies. They know when they see what the future is, people will come back to the cities and people will come back to offices. I do think because of work from home, a lot of companies will scale back on their square footage. And I think that is going to provide an opportunity for startups and small businesses to lease spaces in great areas around the country in cities that they previously couldn't have afforded because of the scaling back in some of the square footage, and I think the reapportionment that we're going to be seeing in and reallocation of real estate. And I think that's a great opportunity for a lot of startups. One final opportunity, and I'll stop yakking, Greg, and I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Equipment and property, great deals to do that, and more importantly, all businesses. There has already been a trend of companies in the the average age of the small business owner is about 53 years old. A lot of us have had it at this point. Well, not me, but a lot of my clients. This COVID thing has been like enough already. I'm expecting there to be a surge in older baby boomer type business owners that are looking to sell their businesses over the next 5 years. And I think COVID has accelerated the urge to do that, which presents a great opportunity to millennials, people in their 30s who might have been out in the business world for 10 years and want to buy into a company, or instead of starting up a business, they buy an existing one. I think that the market conditions are perfect for this. You're going to have willing sellers. You're going to have eager buyers. You've got low interest rates, low inflation rates, low capital gains taxes right now, unless something happens in Washington. So it's a great environment coming out of COVID, where I think we're going to see a lot of turnover in business ownership. And I think a lot of business, good entrepreneurs will be looking for those opportunities as well.
Just about a minute left in our conversation with Gene Marks. And Gene, one big change we're going to see for small business is what's going to happen in Washington. We're going to have a new president, Joe Biden, coming in just a couple of weeks here. And obviously that brings new policies. We are militantly apolitical, or at least non-political here on Expert Insights, but we do need to talk about different policies like we did with PPP. And we've talked about regulations before in our conversations. And so you've also written on 3 major changes you think we might see from a Biden administrations. And one in particular, I think a lot of folks will find interesting is when it comes to freelancers.
Yeah, I think freelancers is an issue for a lot of small businesses, including my own, because we do employ a lot of freelancers in our company. Biden was a big supporter of the law that went that became law in California this year, which was really forcing a lot of companies to reclassify independent contractors as employees. Now, Uber and the ride-sharing companies contested that and won actually in a vote in November, where they could be exempted from the law. But it still carries on for a lot of employers in California. And Biden was and still is a big supporter of that law. So I think that Biden is going to have a tough time getting a lot of things through Congress, because the Senate is split. But at the same time, he can do a lot of things from a labor and a tax perspective. And I think that, he can make some changes to the independent contracting rules that we have now. They're not laws, through the Treasury Department, Department of Labor, and the IRS, which are going to favor employees who or independent contractors who want to be classified as employees. A lot of people argue that's a bad thing for some independent contractors. They want to be independent. Other people say that they need more rights as employees. Either way, it's going to be a change in how business is being done with independent contractors. And I think that's something that we might very well see over the next couple of years. So if you use a lot of independent contractors in your business, make sure that you keep a close eye on what's going on in Washington and have a good independent third-party agreement with your independent contractors in place right now, because you're going to have to give this consideration in the future.
Well, Gene, given how much activity we've seen in just the first week of 2021, I have a feeling we'll have a lot more developments to be talking about as the months progress. Thank you very much for your time, as always, and we look forward to the next time as well.
Thank you, Greg. Look forward to speaking again.
Thank you, sir. Gene Marks is a small business owner, head of the Marks Group, an accomplished speaker and columnist. You can find him at genemarks.com. I'm Greg Corombos. This is Expert Insights.
Biz Filings, a Wolters Kluwer company, has been incorporating businesses since 1996.